Pork has been advantaged by the fact that it has remained an affordable source of protein. Although sales are suggesting that yes, there's a bit of a pickup, but not as much as I was expecting. I was expecting a much more volume, much higher sales. Unfortunately, because beef is really expensive, but people seem to be pivoting towards chicken way more than pork, and of course chicken is supply managed, and we know that we're importing a lot more chicken from the U.S. right now, which shows the popularity of the meat. But when it comes to pork, I'd say pork is going through a phase where perhaps there's an opportunity to re-engage with the public.
Well, good day. My name is Ruud Zijlstra, University of Alberta. This is another Swine podcast show Canada. And today I have with me Dr. Sylvain Charlebois from the Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
Much of a pleasure. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about how food inflation shapes Canadian pork demand. And as a first question to start with this topic, food inflation obviously has been a major concern for Canadian consumers, particularly the last half of a decade, I would say. How has it changed pork purchasing behavior, and what signals should pork producers be watching for?
Pork has been advantaged by the fact that it has remained an affordable source of protein. Although sales are suggesting that yes, there's a bit of a pickup, but not as much as I was expecting. I was expecting a much more volume, much higher sales. Unfortunately, because beef is really expensive, but people seem to be pivoting towards chicken way more than pork, and of course chicken is supply managed, and we know that we're importing a lot more chicken from the U.S. right now, which shows the popularity of the meat. But when it comes to pork, I'd say pork is going through a phase where perhaps there's an opportunity to re-engage with the public. I think, and it's not gonna end tomorrow. We do expect pressures at the meat counter to continue for a while. So that window of opportunity is actually going to be for a while. So hopefully at some point that the consumer will actually revalue pork, or will see pork as a viable option when it comes to protein.
So when it then comes to food inflation for each of those products you just described, has the inflationary trend be the same for beef, pork, and chicken, or are there some differences among those three?
So actually, all three are up, but it hasn't been as much for pork in particular. So, and this is the challenge with meat right now. I mean, all three components of the trifecta are more expensive. Beef is absolutely number one. It's been number one for a while. Chicken is actually second, which is a bit of a surprise because we always expect chicken to be way more stable, but it hasn't been. So for pork to be that third leg, I guess, is a bit of a surprise, to be honest. I mean, we just think that perhaps pork hasn't been able to capture people's imagination and versatility, I guess. Whenever food, for example, goes through a TikTok moment, TikTok moments will explore the versatility of certain food products. We're seeing that right now with cottage cheese as an example. People can actually imagine themselves eating cottage cheese for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. For snacks, they can bake with cottage cheese now. I think at some point with pork, we have to think about doing that to actually allow people to think about pork throughout the day, basically, and not just for specific periods of the day.
Vivovital from DSM Firmenich is an ultra-pure form of benzoic acid that, when used as a feed acidifier, enhances nutrient digestibility and optimizes post-weaning growth rates. Research has shown Vivovital improves average daily gain, average daily feed intake, and feed to gain when fed in starter rations at a 0.50% inclusion rate. For swine nutritionists and veterinarians seeking more effective solutions to support nursery pig performance, try Vivovital. Learn more at dsm-firmenich.com/Vivovital.
So that's what you mean with versatility. It's not from one animal, make sure that there's different meals during the day, that parts of those animal are being eaten.
Yeah, that's right. And so there are different parts of the animal as well that could be explored. But I don't think we've, the best I've seen basically is out of Quebec with some marketing commercials, but they just sell pork. They're not selling parts, or they're not selling the practical nature of the protein source. Not really.
So then when it comes to signals that producers should be watching, it's exactly that pork consumption doesn't keep up with beef and chicken. That's basically what you're describing?
I think the best thing that has happened to pork in recent years was the pulled pork phenomena. Pulled pork actually was very good to the category, but it's kind of dying off right now. It really has allowed other sources of protein to come in, and so I think we need to figure out something else. Anyways, whether I've always believed that perhaps we should copy what has happened to Angus beef, selling a breed like the Rock, for example. Who knows? But I think there's something that we could do to re-energize the public or re-energize demand for pork in some way or another.
So one of the things we've seen here out west is a little bit under the, let's call it brand, heritage pork.
Oh, yes. I've heard about it, yes.
What would your thoughts about that? Like it's pork that is a little bit more marbled, has a little bit more fat, and fat means taste. Could that play a positive role?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, it's local, and obviously selling local and Canadian is certainly has currency right now for sure. And of course, heritage nostalgia actually sells quite a bit. In fact, many companies are starting to bank on nostalgia to actually get people to re-engage with their products. So I'm not surprised to see meat do that, but it will attract certain people. I'm not sure it would attract like the younger crowd or the boomers or people looking for different alternatives out there. So I'm not entirely sure. Heritage remains consistent with what we've seen, I guess, throughout the years, just selling pork as a source, and that's about it, and not exploring the versatility of the meat, or when you can actually eat it, and what other things you can do with pork.
Yeah, interesting. So a little bit to dive relative to the price aspects. So when consumers face higher grocery bills, and income doesn't go up at the same speed, how does pork compete against other protein sources such as beef and poultry, and perhaps also plant-based alternatives?
Well, I think pork has remained a very competitive meat product as far as I'm concerned. So obviously, prices at Farmgate are cyclical, which actually makes the business model, I would say, an interesting one. I'll leave it at that.
I agree.
You have to have a very strong heart to be in the hog business, because you never know what's going to happen. And of course, in recent years, it's been very volatile. So it hasn't been easy for hog producers in particular, of course. But now we're seeing companies like Olymel, they've turned a corner. They're doing much better. And I think to consolidate the positioning of the product itself, I think it's time to explore other things. Like bacon, for example. Everyone loves bacon. The problem with bacon is it's not all that healthy. And so you kind of have to start, and health is a big deal. And pork can be positioned as a very healthy source of protein. You just have to kind of spin it. But a lot of the things that when people think about pork, they will often think about things that may not be as healthy. And so I would say that the meat itself, the source itself, may be misunderstood by a great number of consumers.
So from that perspective, having a very lean meat, not having a lot of fat, would be positive?
I would say so. Yeah, absolutely. And it is possible with genetics and with different breeds as well. So I think that's probably the spin that you may want to tackle right now with protein fortified products everywhere due to the fact that proteins are expensive and the GLP-1 phenomena. I would say that probably right now there's an opportunity for the pork industry to look at how these phenomena could support demand for pork consumption in general.
So how do you then see pork stacking up against plant-based protein sources as an alternative?
They're two different products. I think they're just. I think they're just catering to two different kinds of products. The people who actually will consume vegetable proteins are obviously they enjoy. They actually will enjoy some sources, these sources for different reasons. But I would say that generally speaking, you're not necessarily looking at the same consumer. They may be the same person, but as a consumer, you'll be looking for different attributes for different reasons. So, but pork actually remains one of the most efficient sources of protein. I mean, of course, you have eggs. Eggs, it's hard to beat eggs, but pork is up there as a viable source. And so I just think that over the last few years, there's been some misconceptions around hog production, which may have actually damaged the reputation of the sector, for example. And environmentally, I remember when I was starting 25 years ago, environmentally, pork was seen as really this awful sort of sector. We've actually moved on from there, which is good. Yeah. So, but at the same time, you want to reinforce that message as much as possible and re-engage with the public.
So if we then pull that together, is that actually financially, so when it comes to price, pork is actually in a good place relative to some, let's call it beef, but we just need to do a better job on marketing and particularly look at some other product alternatives to make better use of that more affordable price to get a better market? Is that?
Exactly. I would say that pork has a promising future, but it's underachieving.
Okay. Yeah.
if you will. Yeah.
Particularly relative to beef. That's basically what we just discussed. Yeah.
I mean, as a family, we have 4 children, so we do use the barbecue quite a bit. We've actually transitioned over to pork for almost anything that goes on the barbecue because of price, obviously.
Yep.
But you tend to change your methods of cooking, and of course, your expectation with the meat is different. But I mean, at the end of the day, like with hamburgers, for example, it's all pork for us now. And I get to appreciate cooking pork, ground pork better, more so than ground beef because it doesn't stick as much. The patty stays together. I mean, it's just, and you can't, you just get used to it. And the taste itself, you kind of discover a new taste other than beef. And so, and frankly, to be honest with you, right now, beef is a victim of its own success. There's more imports into our country from Australia, from Mexico, and people are buying subpar beef right now. A lot of people, and when you buy ground beef, you don't know exactly what you're getting. At least with pork, you really know what you're getting, and you're getting a good, high-quality product at a reasonable price.
No, I agree with your comment on the barbecue wholeheartedly. Like most of what we barbecue at home is actually pork as well. And one major advantage that I like is you're done within less than 10 minutes, right?
I know. Exactly, and it's a wider meat, of course, but and sometimes people want red in their hamburger. But I would say I prefer cooking with pork meat
Yep,
now.
yep,
So
yep. Well, we're talking to
they converted.
barbecue people, yeah.
Exactly.
So, do you think that food inflation that we've seen, will it create any lasting effects in consumer demand? Or will purchasing patterns return to pre-inflation trends once things calm down? What are you thinking there?
No, I'm concerned right now because so since Prime Minister Carney has come into office, food inflation has always been above inflation. So
Yeah,
it's been
yeah,
16 months, and this is a really important issue because as soon as you see food inflation being above inflation for a long period of time, people will notice higher prices,
yeah.
and that will change behavior. It will push them to consider other products. And so, will that help pork in general? I suspect that it would. I would say over time, we're not at the point where people will convert, but I do think that really overall right now we're seeing a marketplace under tremendous pressure due to food inflation, and we have the highest food inflation rate among G7 countries. So it's hard to say, a systemic factors are responsible for our higher food inflation rate. There's some things that are domestically driven that are making food more expensive. So because of that, I do think that we're anticipating more change. Essentially, from a behavioral perspective, we're actually are expecting. So right now, the consumer in Canada is way more strategic than they used to. But also, over time, I do expect more to come, and consumers will actually start using AI, for example. And this is the opportunity for pork. How do you actually empower consumers through AI to get into their minds as a viable option? And I know there's some tools out there helping people making choices. And of course, we all know that Loblaw has actually entered into a relationship with, I think, both Google and OpenAI. I think there's going to be a lot of that. So how do you actually get into that game and prompt consumers to actually consider pork, given the food inflation storm we're in right now?
So you mentioned Canada ranking highest among G7 for food inflation. Are there any underlying causes for that were out there?
Well, I mean, there's the dollar now. The dollar is actually weaker. There's, of course, interprovincial trade barriers. We don't really have a food economy that has the capacity to absorb shocks. That's what we've learned the last 20 years. Our food inflation problem is not new. I mean, we've actually had this issue for quite a long time, and so, but we never really addressed it properly, unfortunately. And so, but now we're at the point. It really started, I would say, during the financial crisis of 2008, and since then we've seen the delta between the food inflation index and the cost of living index increase year after year. And as soon as we have like a crisis like Ukraine, for example, COVID, and now Iran, we're seeing that delta increase, unfortunately. And so this is now that we're noticing that we have some major issues to address. So I would say really it's mostly domestic. But the thing is that food inflation is so politicized nowadays that you can feel that the media is not necessarily looking at specific domestic issues for fear of blaming the current government. So we look at El Nino, we look at geopolitics, we look at all sorts of things we can't control, climate change, things we can't control to blame food inflation. So there's a part of the population that recognizes that we have a problem, but there's a good part of the population that says, it's not really our fault. There's nothing really we can do. But there are things we can do.
Yeah, I agree. So what role do supply chain disruptions or labor shortages, global market dynamics like we just discussed, do they actually play a role in driving pork prices from farm to retail, or is it other factors?
Well, I mean, supply chains aren't necessarily all that efficient in Canada. You just drive around and you'll see that roads aren't necessarily. I'm back from Europe in Ireland, and roads are super nice. I mean, they're very well kept, and so driving around with livestock, with products, and if you're part of the cold chain, you do reduce risk of seeing. Breaks, breaches in the cold chain. So that's certainly helpful. Those are things that we don't necessarily. We've taken logistics for granted, to be honest. And the cost to distribute food in Canada is very, very expensive, and that's really unfortunate. And can we do better? Well, in pork, I mean, I would say that like Maple Leaf, for example, has some really good solid plants in Canada. The most recent one, of course, in Hamilton, which is state of the art, I would say. So we've done a lot of work with processing. And Alimel, of course, has actually shut down some plants that weren't necessarily all that efficient. So there's been some cleaning up there. But fact remains that really it's been always tough to remain competitive. That's the thing.
But is it solely to see on what is going on in the packing plants, or are there still other issues beyond that drive the price from farm to retail?
I mean, basically, I think there's some regulations, but I mean, other than that, I honestly, with pork prices have been relatively stable in Canada, even compared with chicken, which is supposed to be the most stable one. Pork prices have actually been stable retail wise. Now, wholesale, I can't really comment. Despite the volatility at Farmgate, we have seen actually a lot of good material, and so I do think that Canadians are served well. What has changed though is that, like a few years ago, exports were subsidizing domestic demand.
Sure. Yeah.
And of course, that's not the case any longer. But we haven't really seen a shift or a change there either after the China closures and the things that have actually been happening around the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we basically sold our genetics to the Chinese.
Yeah. Yeah.
We created our own competition, so we shouldn't be surprised, and I think we should stop that because genetics are going to be really critical, and so of course that's why we're talking about cloning and gene editing, and those are going to be fantastic technologies to help the sector. But that's one blind spot that I think the industry has, is like, how transparent are you going to be? Du Breton, which is the largest organic pork producer in the world, they're actually based in Canada, and this week they decided to label their products non-cloned, non-gene edited, and so that's going to bring some confusion to the marketplace, because they're going to look at Du Breton and say, okay, so it's not cloned, not gene edited. Does it mean that the others are?
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be incredibly important for the sector to really look into that. Like, it's great to actually take advantage of some of these technologies, but at the same time, you can't really undermine consumer trust.
Yeah, yeah. I think that still will be the key. Like you already told us, pork is very affordable, so let's make sure we don't add additional barriers relative to the consumers.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So for the final question, I'm asking you to look in your crystal ball and looking ahead, what economic or consumer trends do you believe will have the greatest impact on Canadian pork demand over the next 5 years?
Well, I think that transparency is going to be one for sure. And I would say demand for protein. How do we position the product favorably in light of the fact that people are looking for more protein? The protein play is going to continue. And so how do we take advantage of that momentum? And I've yet to see anything creative, novel. I'm not seeing anything creative and novel coming from chicken. And so I'm seeing some stuff with eggs, but not with chicken. So I think there's an opportunity here to do something different, something unique. I don't know what that is, but you really need to explore anything that could be creative, I guess.
So that's then on the positive side. Is there other things we really need to watch for to make sure that consumers don't turn their back?
Well, actually, I don't think that consumers are turning their back on pork. It's just sometimes they just don't know what to do, and frankly, they don't know how to cook it. They'll cook it the way their parents cooked it, and that's not good.
Too much, yeah.
It takes a generation to really re-educate the public in terms of how to deal with a product like pork in general. The safety of the pork is incredible. I can't remember the last time I saw a recall related to pork. I just can't. I've chicken, yes, absolutely. Beef, yes. I mean, the largest food recall in the history of our country is beef.
Yeah.
XL Foods, and so, but pork, it should be seen as a safe, incredibly efficient source of protein. I just think it needs to be supported by a really creative campaign that can go in many different directions, and through social media. I mean, a lot of things can happen. You just need one influencer to really get people going around around pork, and I think that's going to help.
Have you seen anything around the world where people kind of are more creative with pork? Like you mentioned pulled pork that you've seen in the last 5 years or so, but has there been anything else? Like
not really. There's nothing that comes up in my mind, but I'm sure there are some. I mean, and perhaps you can even import dish ideas from other places. Like I used to live in Austria, and I remember one of my favorite meals was speck.
Sure.
You probably, I don't know if you're German or not, but speck is
tasty.
It's very tasty. We ate speck a lot when we were in Austria, so we just loved it. Yeah.
And of course, schnitzel you would have had there. So.
Schnitzel, absolutely, of course.
Yeah.
It's time for our famous three.
Still delegating work to someone who hasn't adapted to AI? You don't need another assistant stuck in 2015. You need a remote AI specialist who can handle inboxes, research, reporting, ops, admin, sales support, and marketing, using tools like ChatGPT, Claude, OpenClaw, and automations. Wise VAs connects you with AI-trained Latin talent in your time zone at up to 80% less than a US AI hire. Schedule your free strategy call at www.wisevas.io.
So if we wrap this up, basically, pork is in a decent place. It's affordable. It's safe. It's a good source of protein. We just need to do a better job marketing it and come up with some creative food items, if you will, to make use of those strengths.
Yeah, the potential is there. We just need to see the product assume that role and take advantage, because the momentum, all the elements are there. You just need to walk through the door and take advantage of what's happening right now.
As final question for the benefit of our audience, is there any particular source or resource that you would recommend if people want to read up on what's happening with pork?
With pork, I mean, with pork in particular, I mean, I read the Western Producer.
Sure.
They do cover the hog industry quite a bit. There's another site for pig. I think it's the pig website or the pig site or something. That's another interesting site as well on that, which covers the hog industry.
Yeah, and Western Producer people can access online too. So yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So
I much appreciate this conversation. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Hope to hear from you in the future. Thank you.
Enjoy your bacon.
Bye.